Hey, what is going on, everybody? Raging Phoenix here, and today I am talking about a game called Overlooting. So, this game is basically a point and click turn based RPG. Besides looting rewards, the only thing you do in the game is attack enemies. This is one of those games that is easy to learn and hard to master. I also feel like this is one of those games that's really great when you're waiting around. I've seen competitive gamers play small browser games while waiting in ranked matches. This game would fit perfectly into that category. This could also be a good game to play when you don't have a lot of time but still want to have some fun during downtime. While the gameplay is simple, it is important to note all the different equipment and stats you can add to your character. We'll go over some of the character items first, then we'll take a look at some of the enemies I've been able to encounter so far. So first, let's look at the common items I was able to find. One of the common weapons you can get is a wooden sword, and no, this isn't Minecraft. Anyway, the wooden sword does increase your luck a little, but the damage is terrible. When it hits for 4 damage, it's great, but most of the time this thing only hits for 1 or 2 damage. In the worst possible scenario, keeping this weapon too long can lead to an early death. The stealth dagger is better than the wooden sword since it does have a chance to critical strike, but it still feels really weak at times. The shotelle is basically the same as the dagger, but considering the dagger does have crit chance, the dagger is still better in my opinion. In terms of damage, the Gladys is better than the wooden sword, but I feel both swords come down to personal preference since one helps with loot and the other can take out enemies a bit easier. You can have two weapons equipped at the same time, but there's also shields you can equip. The common shields you'll decide from is the wooden shield and the bronze buckler. These shields heavily come down to personal preference. You'll either be able to guard against one attack while being able to block 2 hit points, or you'll be well rounded with being able to guard against an attack, be able to block 1 hit point every time you're attacked, and have a little bit of luck on your side. Wooden Shield is a personal favorite out of the two for me, but again, these come down to personal preference. There were 4 types of footwear I was able to find under the common rarity. Thief boots, comfy boots, and wayfarer boots all feel somewhat the same except one grants swiftness, one grants swiftness and luck, and the last one grants swiftness and increased crit chance. The only boots that actually felt better than all of these are the old greaves, considering the game never really explained what swiftness is good for, plus this is the only footwear that grants armor. There were only 2 equipment items I found for the torso and the common rarity, the old breastplate and the comfy jacket. This is basically another wooden shield versus bronze buckler situation. I prefer the comfy jacket, especially when paired with the wooden shield. Decent armor buff on top of having 10 total points of luck. In terms of common headwear, I only found 4 of them. The Thief Mask and Wayfarer Hat are the worst in my opinion since the dodge effect didn't really happen a whole lot with these, and the other stats didn't really make much of an impact either. The Comfy Hat has the same stats as the Comfy Jacket, which could be a good combo if you care about luck. If you care more about armor, the old helmet is the way to go. The old helmet also combines well with the old breastplate and old greaves. 9 total armor isn't bad when starting out. Again, a lot of these items come down to personal preference, but having luck and armor is always important to me, so I can try to get stronger items. Speaking of stronger items, let's look at the uncommon items. First, we'll look at uncommon weapons. Improvised dagger could be good all around early since it has crit chance and luck. Damage is okay, but still could be better. Parrying dagger does more damage than the improvised dagger and has a chance to counterattack, so it's slightly better. Improvised hammer is kind of weird to me because the game didn't really explain what's so good about bludgeoning as a character stat, but also the damage being 1 through 5 means the thing can basically do nothing at times. Additional luck is kind of nice, but the damage kind of turns me away from this one. Poison Knife is the best uncommon weapon in my opinion, since it consistently does at least 2 damage on top of 2 poison, meaning one attack does at least 4 damage altogether every time. It's just such a good weapon. Improvised Shield is the first uncommon shield we'll look at, and it's basically the same as the wooden shield, except instead of being able to guard against an attack, you gain 1 regeneration, which restores 1 health after every turn. So this can be really powerful or mean absolutely nothing depending on the enemies you are currently versing. Bronze Shield and Steel Buckler are literally the same, so who cares which one you pick. Once you get into the uncommon and higher rarities, you will start getting rings and necklaces. These usually aren't game breaking, but of course, the more stats or the higher stats, the better. One of these that I got most of the time is the Lucky Charm. This just grants additional luck, obviously, but if you're going for a luck build until you get super powerful items, this is a great addition to have. The Traveler's Amulet can pair extremely well with the Parrying Dagger since you'll have a whopping 40% chance to counterattack. If you favor crit builds, the Ritual Ring can provide additional benefits there. As I said before, I don't know what's so special about the bludgeoning stat, but if you like bludgeoning, Iron Ring can be a great item for you. In terms of footwear, Infiltrator boots can be a good addition if you decide to build crit. Apart from that, Squire Greaves and Ancient Greaves are basically the same, so like the shield from earlier, it really doesn't matter which one you pick. Forbidden Breastplate is where we'll start on the torso items. This breastplate adds a good amount of armor while adding Enrage to your character. Not sure how significant Enrage is, since again, the game doesn't really talk about it, but being able to block 3 hit points on top of it seems decent. Infiltrator Cloak can be seen as a much better option since you have a chance to counterattack and dodge. Scout Cloak is basically the same. Ancient Breastplate and Squire Chainmail both have the same effect, so it doesn't matter which one you pick. Starting to see a common theme with the Squire and Ancient items here. Forbidden Helmet has armor and adds Thorns to your stats. Thorns, I assume, does damage back to the attacker, which is honestly pretty good. Mask of the Helpless can be another great addition to luck builds. Scout Cowl doesn't seem all that great to me, but I usually don't build dodge or swiftness, so this item is useless to me. Okay, now we'll take a look at rare items. You can find some really powerful swords in this rarity, such as the Spatha and the Bastard Sword. Soul Drain Sword is great for when you want damage and a little bit of healing. The Hunter Knife is good for crit builds, but the swords previously mentioned would probably be a better option. The Dueling Dagger could be argued to be better than the Hunter Knife since you have counterattack instead of additional crit damage, but it's up to the player what they think is better. I still prefer the swords over this. My favorite weapon in the entirety of the game so far has to be the Court Dagger, since this applies a stack of 4 poison every time you hit an enemy, on top of the 3 or 4 damage it already does, so you can take out enemies big and small with ease. The only shield I was able to get in this rarity is the Steel Shield. This shield is obviously better than the rest since it is rare, and gives the most armor out of all the ones I've shown so far. The necklaces and rings in this category seem kind of underwhelming, but it could just be my expectations since they are rare. I probably figured they'd be a lot more powerful than what they are. Anyway, the healing amulet only gives 1 regeneration, so it could be good if you found other healing items to work with it, but alone it seems kind of weak to me. Ostentatious Ring is great for luck and can work really well with other bludgeoning items. Skull Ring grants 2 Enrage, which could be useful if I knew what Enrage did exactly. So far, the Opal Amulet seems to be the best, especially with a crit build because more damage is always better. Speaking of crit builds, Assassin's Mask plays right into that and boosts the player's armor by 3. Not a bad addition to a build like that. Historic Helmet gives the player the most armor out of the headwear I found, so if you want a tank build, this could be great for that. Mask of the Fearless gives half the armor, but makes up for it with the amount of enrage the player gets. Undead Helmet can be arguably better than the Historic Helmet since it has 1 less in armor value, and Thorns can be great for punishing enemies. Torso items were actually really good in this rarity. Cultist Robes are a good example since they make the player tougher and give the player a chance to dodge. Explorer Cloak isn't a bad option either, considering you get a pretty good counterattack chance. Air Cape seems a bit more well rounded, but not all that great in my opinion. Assassin Cloak is similar to Explorer Cloak, except it has 1 more armor value and less dodge and counterattack value. Undead Breastplate gives a decent amount of armor on top of 1 Enrage. This pairs really well with Mask of the Fearless for Enrage builds at this rarity. Knight Breastplate is one of my favorites. I love being hard to kill in games like this, and having 8 armor on top of any other armor items currently equipped can make for a long survival time. The footwear is pretty much the same as the torso. The items are really good, but the Explorer boots feel like the worst out of what I found. I mean, if I was building for counterattack, dodge, or swiftness, this would probably have been a good item, but no armor value made it less appealing to me. Cultist shoes are more or less what I'm looking for. Decent armor value and a small chance to dodge, way better than Explorer boots in my opinion. Air boots aren't bad, but at this point when I'm getting rare items, luck means somewhat little to me, so the cultist shoes are still better. Undead boots aren't all that great either in my opinion since they only grant swiftness and 3 armor. Historic greaves are pretty much the same as the cultist shoes. It comes down to if you want enrage or dodge. I favor the dodge since I'm trying to have high survivability anyway, so might as well add some dodge value in there. Finally, we have the epic items. I don't know if there's any rarity beyond epic since I didn't make it that far, but here's the items I found so far. Starting with weapons, first we have the S-Stock, I think that's how you pronounce it. This is the crit build's best friend, 20% crit chance on top of all other crit values you could potentially have so far, with a minimum of 6 damage is really strong. The Falcon is a good addition to swiftness builds, but as I said before, I don't really know what's so good about swiftness, so I didn't really use this. Seems strong with the right build though. Regal's sword is just strong altogether, giving a decent amount of luck and hefty damage. Morningstar has to be one of the best weapons I've gotten so far. Not sure what bludgeoning is good for, but having a weapon that could potentially do 12 damage is extremely good for this game. In terms of headwear, Shadow Mask is a powerful option considering you get armor, increased crit chance, increased crit damage, and increased dodge. Excellent addition to crit builds. The Curse Helmet is another good option. I love this one simply because it adds good armor value while allowing you to regenerate some health. My favorite addition to my armor builds. Iron Metal is a really valuable necklace to equip. May not seem like much, but the more attacks you can guard against, the better. Ostentatious Necklace is a great addition. Having additional luck is fine, but amplifying damage will always be a good thing. Wind Ring is the only ring I found in this rarity, and I don't even think I equipped it. If you care about crit and swiftness, this is a good addition, but not something I want, honestly. For the torso, Spiked Breastplate is amazing when paired with Cursed Helmet. The Armor and Thorns value is incredible for survivability and damage. Leader Garb isn't as good as the Spiked Breastplate in my opinion. The armor and dodge value is amazing, but I feel the dealing damage back to attackers is what makes the Spiked Breastplate slightly better. Shadow Boots are a great addition for crit builds. Ranger Boots provide decent stats overall. Curse Boots aren't that great in my opinion unless you're stacking regeneration. Leader Boots are another great addition for survivability, especially when stacking dodge value. Pairs great with Leader Garb. Spike Greaves are amazing for the build that I mentioned earlier with Spiked Breastplate and Cursed Helmet. Okay, so that's all the items that I was able to find in the game so far. If it sounded like I was repeating myself throughout all that, I apologize. I didn't expect there to be that many items to talk about, and I still didn't cover every single item in the game, so. Anyway, now let's talk about the enemies you encounter. There aren't a whole lot from what I've experienced, but I never made it past this first area, so. I don't even know if there are different environments besides this one, honestly. I've never even encountered any bosses if there are any. Anyway, the very first enemy you encounter is the slime. The slime has no abilities at all and dies in one hit. Just does nothing and dies. Next we have the wallbit. These deal double damage when accompanied by other enemies, so it's best to kill everything first to weaken the wallbit itself. Forestkin Assassin dodges the first attack it receives. Even though it says 50% chance, it almost always dodges. I kinda hate this species of these enemies because there were so many times I wanted to say foreskin instead of forestkin. The way it's spelled just messes with my mild dyslexia, and foreskin comes to mind since my mind is always in the gutter. Anyway, after discovering the foreskin assassin, you encounter the scornake. If there's only one of these, they aren't much of a threat, but when dealing with multiple of these, poison counters can really hurt after a while. Forestkin Warrior blocks the first attack it receives, so might as well attack it just to get the wasted attack out of the way. Forestkin Brute has no abilities, but dealing 10 damage each attack can really hurt, especially when there's more than one of these. Forestkin Druid increases all enemies' damage by 4. I think it's a permanent increase too for that section that you're fighting the enemies in, so might as well just kill everything else since the Druid only deals 3 damage. Tortobra has a weak attack, but stacks a lot of poison, making these things extremely dangerous. I think I died to these more than anything. The last enemy I encountered is the Wargark. Just like the Wallbit, this enemy gets double damage when not alone, but it has a lot more health and damage. When this thing is accompanied by a Totobra, you might as well just die with all the damage and poison. As I said, not a lot of enemies, but I never really made it far because apparently I suck at building my character. Anyway, now let's talk about the additional features in the game that help the player along their journey. First off, there's this character that drops a couple of potions for the player. I thought you had to pick one or the other, but you actually get to take both, which is pretty cool. There's also this book that allows players to add some perks to their existing build. There's this anvil that allows you to get items with increased rarity by sacrificing 3 items of the same rarity in your inventory. By the time I found this, I already had really good items, so I rarely ever put this to use. Last thing I wanted to mention is the statue. This is one of my favorites since you can choose the heart to gain health, or you can choose the hammer to get an upgrade of one of your items. Most of the time you'll obviously take the upgrade, but health is great for when it looks like your game will be over soon. A little bit of feedback I'll add is that the game could probably use a tutorial or guide. So the gameplay is simple enough, some people may be like me and not really know the impact of certain stats. Plus I didn't find out how to upgrade weapons and armor until losing so many times that eventually it just dawned on me. I kept wondering why items that were the same would glow while I was looting. I thought it was just to show that I had that item already. No, the glowing lets the player know that items can be upgraded. If I knew this sooner, I probably would have made it further and discovered more, but I didn't. So anyway, that's Overlooting. If any of you watching are interested in checking it out, click the link in the description and you'll be able to download the demo on the Steam page. So far, I'd say I'd give this game maybe like a 8 out of 10 because like I said, if it did have like a little bit more information, I probably could have made it further. The rating would have been higher, but 8 out of 10 is not a bad rating. At first, I kind of thought the game was like a little bit of like whatever because all it really was is that you click, kill enemies, pick up items, click, kill enemies, pick up items. But after a while, I kind of found the game a little bit addicting because like once you really started to learn like what builds you like, what items you want for your character, you eventually start making it much further and discovering a little bit more at a time. So yeah, at first the game can seem kind of meh, but it does get a little bit addicting after a while. And like I said, if you don't have a whole lot of time to spare and you just want to play something to kill the time that you do have that's free, this is a great game for that. Anyway, with all that being said, I hope you all enjoyed the video. Remember to like, subscribe, comment, check out Merc Clan and W down below, and I'll talk to you guys next time.